Ruth Adley, your grace, come up from the Marchfield agency, and very glad of the place. It was a lie, and the Duke of Vellamore let it stand. He had known her the instant she came through the green baize door behind his housekeeper, known her before she raised her eyes, before she managed the small stiff curtsy of a woman who had learned it that morning out of a book. 3 years ago she had worn primrose silk and stood in a crush of 200 people in town, and when a footman dropped a tray of glasses and the whole room laughed, she had been the only creature in it to go down on her knees among the pieces and help him gather them. And she had cut her thumb doing it, and had hidden the blood in her glove so that nobody would make a fuss. Gideon Rathmore had been raised in a house where a broken glass cost a boy his supper. He had not forgotten her, and he was not going to begin now. Mrs. Bray finds you satisfactory, he said. That is a rarer distinction than my approval. You will find the house cold. I do not mind cold, your grace. You will, he said, and went out. He walked the length of his own portrait gallery twice before he trusted himself to sit down. Miss Rosamond Carew. He knew the whole of it, because he read the papers and because men told him things whether he wished it or not. Sir Ambrose Carew had died in the spring with his name in ruins, accused of setting his hand to a bill of exchange he had never seen. The accusation had never come to trial, which meant it had never been disproved, which in that world was worse. The house had gone. The daughter had gone to an uncle, Mr. Peveril Crail, and Crail had done arithmetic on her, and the answer had come out as Mr. Absalom Hulling, 53 years old, who held a great many of the late baronet's debts and had generously offered to forgive them at the altar. 4 weeks ago she had walked out of Crail's house at 5 in the morning with a bandbox, and now she was scouring hearths at Vellamore, 90 miles north, under a name out of a hymn book. The obvious thing was to speak. To send for her, to say, Miss Carew, you are safe here, and to watch the relief come into her face. He did not do it. He sat a long time with his hands flat on the desk and thought about a woman kneeling on broken glass in primrose silk, and he understood, with a coldness that was almost anger at himself, that if he spoke he would be taking the only thing she had left. She had chosen a name. She had bought it with a bandbox and 90 miles and God knew what nights on the road. It was not his to take away and hand back to her as a gift. So he said nothing. He rang for his steward instead, the new woman. Adley. Your grace, Mrs. Bray has put her to the scullery, I imagine. The grates, your grace, and the scullery of an evening. The library wants dusting and reordering. Nobody has touched it since my mother died, and I am told the damp is in the lower shelves. Gideon turned a paper over. Give it to her. Say it comes from you, and that it is because she has a light hand. Do not say it comes from me. Ferris, who had been 40 years at Vellamore and had buried 2 dukes, did not so much as blink. Very good, your grace. It was a small thing, and it bought her a great deal. Warm work, alone, out of the way of the upper servants, with a door she could hear opening. He began to see her, after that, in the incidental way of a man who lives in a house, on a ladder with her sleeves pinned back, carrying an armful of quartos with the particular care of somebody who knew what they were worth. Once at the turn of the stair, standing quite still in a bar of winter sun with her eyes shut, and he had gone back the way he came rather than open them. He learned things he had no business learning. She mended her own cuffs, and mended them beautifully, in the tiny invisible stitch that is taught to gentlemen and to nobody else. She could not carry a full call scuttle up a flight without stopping, and she never once let anyone see her stop. She reshelved his mother's books wrongly for a week, and then correctly forever after, which meant she had found the catalogue, which meant she read Latin, and she was afraid, not showily. She simply always knew where the doors were. In the 2nd month he began leaving a book on the window seat at the library's south end, where the light was, and where a servant might reasonably sit for a quarter of an hour if she were dusting the sill and nobody came. He left a volume of Voyages. 3 days later it had moved, still on the seat, still squared to the edge, but a dried beech leaf had been laid in it 40 pages further on than he had put it. He left another. The leaf travelled again. He did not mention it. Neither did she. It went on for 6 weeks, and the Duke of Vellamore, who was 38 years old and had been thought unmarriageable by every hostess between 2 counties, found himself walking faster on the days he went to look. Then the frost broke, the roads opened, and a carriage came up the avenue that he did not know. He was crossing the great hall when Ferris admitted them, and so he saw everything at once. The stout man in a good coat coming in first with his hat already off and his voice already going. And behind him a narrow, silent person with an official look about him, and above them on the turn of the staircase a housemaid with a coal scuttle who had stopped absolutely dead. "Your Grace," said the stout man, "Peveril Crail of Crail and Batten, and I am here upon a most distressing family business, most distressing, concerning my niece." Gideon did not look up at the staircase. He knew, without looking, that she had not moved, because a person cannot move when she has forgotten how. "My hall is not an office, Mr. Crail," he said, "but you may state it. A young woman, Your Grace, Miss Rosamond Carew. Disordered in her mind, I am grieved to say, since her poor father's death, and gone off from her natural protectors, and there is reason to think she has taken a place in service somewhere in this part of the country under a false name." Crail produced a paper. "Mr. Hulling and I have engaged Mr. Sneath here to make inquiry at the great houses, purely for her own good. She is not fit to be at large." The narrow man inclined his head an inch. Above them, very carefully, a coal scuttle was set down on the stair. Gideon put his hands behind his back. "You wish me to produce a list of my servants," he said, "if your Grace would be so gracious." "I am never gracious before noon." He let the silence sit. "I keep the household book myself. It's a habit of mine. There is no Miss Carew in this house, Mr. Crail. There is no Carew in my employ, nor has there been in 11 years, and I will not have my women stood up in a line to be looked over like heifers at a fair by a man from town." Crail's face went a slow, hard red. "Your Grace, the girl is—" "The girl," said Gideon, "is of age. She is under my guardianship. Then you have mislaid a grown woman, sir, which is a thing that happens chiefly to men who have given her a reason to go." He turned. "Ferris, Mr. Crail's carriage." "It is at the door, Your Grace," said Ferris, who had never moved it. He did not go into the library that evening. He went into his study and sat with the fire and a book he did not read, and at a little after 10 the door opened without a knock. She stood in the doorway in her grey stuff gown with her cap in her hand, and her face was white and perfectly composed, and she said, "You knew." Gideon closed the book. "Yes." "How long?" "From the hour you arrived." She came 2 steps into the room. "Then say it. Say the name." "Miss Rosamond Carew," said the Duke of Vellamore, and watched her flinch as though he had thrown something. "Why did you not send me away?" "Where would you have gone?" "That is not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It is the reason. The answer is that you had chosen a name and paid for it, and it was not mine to take from you. If I had said Miss Carew in the hall on the first morning, you would have known from that hour that you lived here on my sufferance, and there would have been nothing left in the world that was yours." He set the book aside. "I judged you had had enough of living upon other people's terms. If I judged wrong, I am sorry for it." She stood very still. Then, in a voice that had gone thin, "The library. You read Latin." It seemed a waste. "The leaf. The leaf was your business," he said, "and I did not intend ever to mention it, and I find I have." Rosamond Carew put her hand out and took hold of the back of a chair. "You lied for me," she said. "In your own hall. To a magistrate's man." "I did not lie. There is no Miss Carew in my employ. There is a housemaid called Adley, and her papers are in order, and I signed them myself." He almost smiled. There's the sort of distinction my grandfather would have called honourable and my mother would have called disgraceful, and I have made my peace with both of them. He will come back." "He will not." Gideon rose and crossed to the desk, and unlocked the flat drawer and laid 3 things on the blotter: a bundle of letters, a sworn statement with a seal upon it, and a slip of paper with a banker's hand across the bottom. "Come here," he said. She came. "Your father's bill," he said, "was drawn on the 14th of October and signed at the counting house of Marbury and Nye. Your father was in Scotland from the 2nd of that month until the 9th of November, and 11 people have now said so upon oath, including the man who drove him. The signature is a clerk's copy. The clerk's name is Nye's nephew, and he confessed it in February to my attorney because he is 24 and had not slept properly in a year." He touched the sealed paper. "That is the deposition." A copy went to the bank, copy to the Carew family solicitor, and a copy 3 weeks ago to every newspaper that printed the original accusation. 2 of them have already printed the correction. The rest will. She was not breathing. And that, he said, is the last of your father's debts, bought in at face value from Mr. Hulling in January, who was delighted, 'cause a debt is worth more in money than in matrimony to a man of that stamp. They are discharged. Not held, discharged. He pushed the slip toward her. Burn it if you like. I have kept no copy. Rosamund did not touch any of it. She stood looking down at the desk with her cap crushed in her fist, and when she finally spoke her voice was almost angry. Why? Because it was within my power and it was not within yours. That is not a reason. That is an inventory. She lifted her head and her eyes were swimming and furious. You have made me a debtor, your grace. My father's name is my own again and I did not earn it back, and now I owe you the whole of it, and you know as well as I do what a woman is expected to pay with when she owes a man that much. Yes, said Gideon quietly, I do. That is why there is a 4th paper. He took it from the drawer and gave it to her. It was a character, a servant's character, in his own hand, unstinting to the point of absurdity, signed and sealed, and pinned to it a note of £40 and the direction of a lady in the north who kept a school and wanted a teacher of languages. That is yours whether you stay or go, he said. It was written in January, before any of the rest of it. Ferris has held a copy since then in case I died or turned out to be a worse man than I hoped. You may walk out of that door tonight and never see me again, and you will not be poor and you will not be Adley, and you will owe me nothing, because a thing is not a debt unless you were asked. The clock did a great deal of work in the silence. You are asking me nothing, she said. No. Why not? The Duke of Vellamore looked at the fire for a moment, because it was easier than looking at her. Because I have watched you count the doors in every room you enter for 4 months, he said. A man does not ask a question of a woman who is standing near a door for the reason you stand near them. He waits until she forgets to. She made a small sound. Then she sat down quite suddenly in the chair she had been holding and put her hands over her face, and Gideon Rathmore stood where he was and did not go to her, which was the hardest thing he had done in 11 years. After a while she said, muffled, the book on the window seat. Was it every week? Every week. I used to go and look before I did the Grates, she said. It was the only part of the day I was Rosamund. He crossed the room then and knelt down beside the chair so that he was not above her, and waited until she took her hands away. Stay, he said. Not as Adley, not as anything you must earn. Stay because the library wants a person who reads Latin and the house wants a person who tells the truth in it, and because I have been walking faster on Thursdays for 6 weeks, like a boy of 19, and the servants have noticed and I no longer care. The laugh that got out of her was half a sob. Thursdays. I left the books on Thursdays. I know, said Rosamund Carew. I counted. She did not go north. The school found another teacher of languages, and the correction ran in the last of the papers in April, and in May a stout man in a good coat wrote a warm letter of congratulation to the Duke of Vellamore and received by return a single line of acknowledgement and no invitation. They were married in June in the little church at the bottom of the park, and she wore primrose, which nobody in the county understood and which made her husband laugh aloud in a house of God. She kept the character he had written. She had it framed to his lasting embarrassment and hung it in the library at the south end above the window seat where the light was good. And every Thursday for the rest of his life, without a word said about it by either of them, the Duke of Vellamore left a book on that seat, and every Thursday a dried beech leaf moved 40 pages on.